Today is the fast of Esther. You know that from the Book of Esther, and tonight begins the holiday of Purim, Jewish holiday in which we celebrate the defeat of the wicked Haman and we celebrate that, and we remember the salvation of the Jews in the time of wicked Haman. It's a grogger for those of you who don't know that. It's actually not. It's actually a container of allergy medicine, but it works the same way, makes the same sound. At any rate, when we read the Book of Esther tonight, the Megillah tonight, which is a mitzvah, every time we read the word Haman, we will shake our groggers, remind us that he was evil. The festival of the holiday of Purim is a reminder of when the Jews found salvation. It started, of course, when Mordecai refused to bow down to the wicked Haman. And I'm not going to shake the grogger every time, but you get the idea. Haman was the vizier, the prime minister, under King Ahasuerus, and he hated the Jews. It should sound familiar. In many ways, he's seen as a prototype for other anti-Semites throughout history. But he got mad when Mordecai refused to bow down to him. And eventually he would go to King Ahasuerus and he would devise a plan in which he would destroy the Jews a year later. And this gave time for Esther and Mordecai to gather together and plan how they were going to handle this. Now, if you read the Book of Esther and you read it in a very cursory manner, it should take you about 15 minutes to read it if you open up your Bible tonight, you will get an interesting story. You will get a story that has been told and retold many times in film and plays and stage. But believe me, you're not getting the whole story. There is a lot of subtext, subplots, things going on here that really don't translate well to English. And Mordecai is very much a powerful man. That doesn't really come across in the text, but he is not somebody to be trifled with. And he, along with Esther, who he has positioned where she is as queen of the kingdom, along with them together, they will create this plan that is really good, it's full of palace intrigues, cabals, as Archer would have said. And eventually it ends with Esther confronting Haman in front of King Ahasuerus, who is angered by what has happened, despite the fact that he has been something of a willing participant in the whole thing all along. He's angered by it, and he gives Esther her request, which is that Haman the wicked be destroyed and that the Jews be saved. And while it's a great story, there is a caveat to this story that sometimes gets missed. Jews were saved. That much is true. However, they were still subject to King Ahasuerus. They were still subjects of a kingdom. They were not in Israel in their own land. As the scripture says, God said to Mordecai, your crown is far from, the crown is far from you. He didn't say it to Mordecai, but the crown is far from you, and you will still be subject to this. It's a fascinating story. It's one of my favorite stories in the Bible. It's not my favorite story. My favorite is the story of King Ahab, but it does have my favorite line in it, which is the line about, you don't know. This may be the very reason that you were put in the position that you were put in. And if you don't carry out that purpose, well, salvation will come from another place and you will be destroyed. The lesson I've taken a lot in life, you don't know why you're here. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes you may never know why you're in a certain place at a certain time. But believe me, there was a reason for it. And there are times in my own life that I've looked back on and thought, I wonder what that reason was. There must have been one, but I wonder what it was. On 3rd of September, 1189, a long time ago, Richard I, otherwise known as Richard the Lionhearted, was crowned King of England. Now, despite the fact that Jews had been in the Kingdom of England since the time of the Normans, they were almost universally reviled. They were almost hated by the Christianized population of England. But the Norman kings, all the way through Richard I, had a special consideration for the Jews, because the Jews were seen as moneylenders, they were seen as business people, because they were seen as wealthy for the most part, which of course is a non sequitur. They were allowed to stay in the kingdom because by doing so, the king maintained his right over them. In other words, the crown is far from you, and they were made to be subject to the king. And when a Jew died, particularly a rich Jew died, everything that he had did not go to his family, did not go to his friends, it went to the king. And Richard I was more than happy to continue this policy. He was more than happy to take things, but it didn't stop the violence towards the Jews. There was a great deal of violence towards Jews in England in the 1190s. So much so that when several Jews went to the investiture, the coronation of Richard I, they wanted to bring gifts. They wanted to show, like Ahasuerus, they wanted to show that, yeah, we're loyal to you, we'll follow your laws. They brought gifts, and they were stopped at the door. They were beaten, stripped, beaten. Their gifts were stolen, and they were ejected from the coronation. Now, as Richard I was getting ready to leave, he was getting ready to go on the crusade, the Third Crusade, there came a rumor that he had ordered the murder of all Jews in England. Now, this would kind of make sense, because if everything that they have reverts to him and he needs money for the crusades, murder all the Jews, and I get the money. But it hadn't actually happened. There was no order. In fact, the opposite had happened. Richard I had issued a writ of protection for Jews. He had sent this out and said, no, don't do that. Don't do that. That's bad. In fact, the Archbishop of Canterbury, who was the leader of the Christian church in England, had said, either King Richard is the man of God or he's the man of the devil, one of the two. There's no middle ground here. Richard was desperately trying to go on this crusade. And so when he looked around at what was happening, he deplored the violence. He didn't like it, but he didn't really do anything to stop it. Now, he punished a few people here and there, but the truth of the matter is there were so many of them that were committing this violence against the Jews, who were committing pogroms, if you will, that there really wasn't an efficient way to do it. Moreover, the social status of some of those who were participating in this violence made it politically unwise for King Richard to actually punish them for disobeying his edict of protection to the Jews. And so he made his final preparations to go on the Crusades. And as he did, historians have noted that, quote, a religious fervor gripped the people of England. In York, where York Castle still stands to this day, there was a local Jewish leader, a guy by the name of Joska of York. And as the violence increased coming into that year's Passover, there was a great deal of concern that they were going to be murdered. So he asked the local sheriff to allow all the Jews in York, there were about 150 of them, into that tower up there in York Castle. The sheriff agreed. He allowed this to happen, primarily because he probably knew about the edict that Richard I had pointed out, and maybe he wasn't one of the people who was, really, really socially high enough or enough of him to worry about it. So he allowed the Jews to move into the tower there at the castle in York for protection. But this was not well accepted by the local populace. In fact, there were numerous crusaders from York who were getting ready to go with Richard on the Crusades, but they didn't feel like they could go, leaving these Jewish moneylenders in the tower at York Castle. And so they surrounded it and besieged it. And the sheriff said, I've got some business to take care of over there. And so he left. And when he came back, finally, on or about the 16th of March, 1190, Jews in the tower were terrified that he was just going to open the gates and let the Crusaders in and kill them. So they wouldn't let him back in. Maybe not the smartest plan, because this just enraged the Crusaders and the mob that was there. And they made it clear that they were going to break down the tower walls and they were going to kill everyone there or convert them. So you had an option. You could convert to Christianity, be baptized, or we'll just kill you. Because I'm pretty sure that's in the Gospels, right? That's what Jesus said. He said. At any rate, the Jews in the tower decided that this was an untenable situation. And much like the Massadans, 2 centuries or a century and a half earlier, they chose to kill themselves. They chose to die rather than convert. And so they began killing themselves. And as they did, the tower was set on fire by the folks outside. The castle burned and the tower burned, and the Jews that were inside there, 150 Jews, died, either by their own hands or in the fire, refusing to convert to Christianity, refusing to give in to the Haman of the day. They just weren't going to do it. Why weren't they rescued, you might say? Why? Where is God in this? Is God not among us now? Truth is that Haman was an Amalekite. He was a descendant of the Amalekites. If you'll recall your scriptures, your teachings, you'll know that the Amalekites attacked Israel during the Exodus. Remember this? The sages have taught us down through the generations that the reason Amalekite attacked Israel was, number one, Amal, the descendants of Amal, were descendants of Esau, and they had a big chip on their shoulders about the Jews. They didn't like the Jews. They never have. They never will. They may not even understand why, but they don't. It's just a tradition. Tradition. At any rate, they attacked Israel. The sages in the scriptures have taught us that the reason that they attacked Israel was because the Israelites, who had just come out of Egypt, remember this, they had seen the 10 plagues. They had seen the Passover. They had seen the parting of the Red Sea. They had seen the drowning of the Egyptians. They had seen Mount Sinai, where God, the finger of God, wrote on the tablets. They'd seen all this. And yet, still weren't sure. Was God really among us? They asked. And when Amalekites heard that, metaphorically speaking, when they thought that the Jews could be weak, they attacked. It's moments like that when it seems like God is asleep. We tend to wonder about our lot in life. Is God really among us? When we step back and consider some things, we have to think about ourselves. And this applies to you even if you're not Jewish, by the way. Did I choose to be Jewish? Now, you could argue, I would argue with you, that nobody chooses to be Jewish. Nobody chooses that. You'll say to me, but Dave, you converted to Judaism. Yes, I did. But there is a understanding in Jewish philosophy that every Jew has within them this Jewish spark that when it's most needed, fans into flame. It would take an hour for me to explain this to you, but in brief, even the convert has that spark because God, by lot, chose them and made them his. I didn't choose it. I've said to people a million times, I've even said it on the air, I don't know why this path was put before me. I have no idea. I know it may not be your path, but I know that it was mine. And so consequently, I had to follow that path. Truth is that the Amalekites are always attacking the Jews. They're always looking for that opportunity. They were the children of Esau. They had a grudge. The grudge that anti-Semitism has no logic. It cannot be reasoned through. We try to understand that. Why do the Nazis hate the Jews? Why do the Russians hate the Jews? Why do the French hate the Jews? Why do Americans hate the Jews? You can't reason it through. There's no logic to it. They've tried putting it out in logic, but it turns into blame, right? It doesn't turn into logic. Reality is, anti-Semitism really raises its ugly head when Jews question, is God really among us? Maul hears the question and takes that as a moment of weakness and chooses to attack. Tonight starts the festival of Purim. Only a one-day festival. We will put on masks and we will eat Haman and we will shake the groggers every time we say the word Haman. We'll celebrate that we overcame Haman the wicked and we restored the Jews to life. Sometimes we forget. It seems to me that even though we did that, we were still subject to another person's rule. And on March 16th, 1190, 150 Jews in that tower in York Castle died because of the same views that Haman had, because of the same views that Amalekite had, because of the same views Adolf Hitler had. Anti-Semitism is nothing new, nor has it ever, nor will it ever diminish. It is literally only waiting for us to ask that question. Is God really among us? And as soon as we start asking that question, evil is unleashed. And who knows why some have to suffer and die and why others survive? Who knows why sometimes the Jews are rescued and sometimes it seems they die at Clifford Tower? The word Purim is based on the word in the language of the Persians for lot, not a Hebrew word. Sometimes it is our lot in life to be chosen by God to be in a certain place at a certain time for a certain reason. Today, we remember 150 Jews massacred. And hopefully, we will remember the lesson, which is that we have to remember there are an awful lot of people in this world that are evil, who will try to destroy us simply because it's our lot in life to be Jewish.